Hello students, I am Dinesh Udupi and we will continue with the paper Molecular Biology, Evolution and Ethology of 6th semester, and this is session 17 of unit 3, and this unit deals with the study of immunology. In this session we are going to study some basic concepts about the immunology. Now, definitions. First, let us understand some definitions. What is immunity? Immunity is the ability of an organism to resist the disease-causing organism. So whenever a disease-causing organism tries to enter into our body, so our body has an ability to resist that disease-causing organism, and that is called immunity, right? Now, the infection. Now, one more word we have to understand. What is infection? Infection is nothing but entry of pathogen into the body through medium like water, food, air, vectors or body fluids. So there are so many different types of pathogens which cause disease, and if those disease causing pathogens enter into our body, that entry of pathogen itself is called infection. Now infection can happen through water, food, air or vectors like mosquito, bedbug, etc., or through body fluids like blood, semen, saliva, etc. Now, the pathogen, what is pathogen? Pathogen is any disease causing organism can be considered as a pathogen. So here I just mentioned you some of the pathogens like protozoa. There are so many protozoans which are pathogens. For example, the Plasmodium vivax, which causes malaria, is a pathogen. Then we have bacteria. So most of the diseases are caused by bacteria. So bacteria are pathogens. Then we have viruses. So you are already familiar with one of the most deadliest virus that attacked humans, right? Coronavirus. I mean COVID-19 virus. So viruses, they are also pathogens. And then we have some worms like ascaris, pinworm, hookworm, etc. They cause the diseases like, and of course there are some other molecular level pathogens. They are not organisms, but they are molecules which can cause disease like prions. Now, the antigen word we have to understand. So any chemical or physical factor that is capable of stimulating immune response can be considered as antigen. So when it comes to the immunology or immune system and immune response, so antigen refers to any chemical or physical factor that is going to stimulate our immune system for immune response. Okay, so that's about the definitions of some words. Now, immunity is the ability of an organism to resist the infection, and infection means entry of pathogen into the body that we already studied. Now, the response shown by the body's immune system to the entry of pathogens, toxic substance, or sometimes the non-self tissue is called immune response. So what is immune response? The response shown by the body's immune system to the infection is called immune response. Now, uh, we can identify different types of immunities. Now, we identify two main types of immunity. One is innate immunity, which is also called non-specific. This type of immunity is present from the time of birth. And then acquired immunity. So the immunity which is acquired during the lifetime of a person is called acquired immunity. Now here you can see the immunity. One type is innate or non-specific immunity, and then we have acquired or specific immunity. This is specific because this type of immunity develops against a specific pathogen like bacteria, virus, etc. And again, this specific type of immunity may be active, where the body's immune system is involved in the production of antibodies or the cells, and passive where the body's immune system is not directly involved but it gets the antibodies from the outer source. So like this, the acquired immunity may be active or passive, and again the active may be natural active or artificial active, and the passive may be natural passive or artificial passive. So in later slides or later sessions we'll understand the difference between all these things. Now here, I just want to give you an example of acquired immunity, which is divided into active and passive type. Again, in the active, you find natural and artificial. So with these examples, we can easily understand it. So you just imagine infection by a bacteria or virus or a protozoan. So if uh, the immunity develops due to the infection, so that can be considered as the natural active acquired immunity. Now, there is another method of vaccination. So you are all familiar with vaccination. Nowadays, all of us are trying to get the vaccine for the COVID-19 virus, right? So what happens when you take the vaccine? Your immune system is going to develop the resistance, right? So it is going to show immune response against this vaccination. So the immunity develops. And this type of immunity is called artificial active acquired immunity. Now here, vaccine is something which is going to stimulate the body's immune system without the entry of real pathogen. Okay, so you can say vaccine is nothing but a dupe for the real pathogen. So that's about the active immunity. When it comes to the passive immunity, as I told you, the person's own immune system is not involved in the passive immunity. So the newborn baby gets the antibodies from the mother. So before the birth, you know that large number of antibodies are transferred from the mother to the embryo just before the birth. And even after the birth, when the baby sucks the mother's milk, okay, so that milk, especially the colostrum, which is produced in the beginning, so it contains large quantities of immunoglobulins. So what are immunoglobulins? Immunoglobulins are the ready-made antibodies. So the baby gets the antibodies directly from the mother. So this type of immunity which develops is called natural passive acquired immunity, because the baby is going to acquire this during its lifetime. And last one, there is one more method. You just think of a person who has suffered from a particular disease. You take the example of this corona, right? The person is infected by COVID, then he recovers, means his immune system fights against that particular virus, and during this immune response his body has produced sufficient number of antibodies to kill that particular virus, right? So he has recovered. Even though he is recovered, uh, in his blood we find large number of the specific antibodies which are produced against that particular virus. Now what one can do is, you can collect the plasma from that recovered person and you can extract the antibodies from that plasma, and you can directly put them into the patient who is suffering from the same disease. So since he gets the ready-made antibodies, he will recover very fast. So this is also called the plasma therapy. Okay. Now, in detail, let us try to understand innate immunity. Innate immunity, the resistance to the infection present in the organism from the time of birth, is called innate immunity. It is also termed non-specific immunity because this kind of immunity is not specific against any type of disease or pathogen. So it is like a wall, okay? It's like a wall which will prevent the entry of anything into our house, okay? So the mechanism is effective against a wide range of infective agents. So some of the example for innate immunity are skin. Skin is the organ which acts like a barrier for entry of pathogens, right? So you remember your skin is the biggest defense uh, material. So it is the biggest defense thing which is protecting you against the infections, right? So no pathogen can pass through your skin, right? Even though the virus, the bacteria, the protozoans, they can come and sit on the skin, but they will not enter into the body because the skin is not going to allow them to enter into your body. But if there is an injury, if there is a cut, then the pathogen can easily enter into the body. Therefore, what we do whenever we get injured, when there are some abrasions on the skin, there is some injury on the skin, so we are going to cover it so that the pathogens will not enter through the wound, right? So skin is the best defense mechanism. So you can consider skin as the first defense mechanism against the infections. Then we have mucus secretions. Mucus is secreted in different parts of the body, like respiratory system, and mucus is also found in the digestive system, in the reproductive system, right? So in all these places, mucus is actually, it contains lysozyme and mucin, which is the sticky substance, and water. So the pathogens are going to be entrapped in this mucus, and they are going to be neutralized. Washing action of tears and saliva. So the tears and saliva, they also contain lysozyme. So lysozyme is the enzyme which is going to break the bacteria. So these two secretions are also going to help you to prevent some infections. So sweat gland secretions. Now we have sweat glands on our skin. Okay, so they secrete sweat. Sweat creates acidic condition on the skin. So this acidic condition will prevent the multiplication of pathogens on the skin. So the acidic condition which is created by the sweat is going to protect you against the infection by many pathogens. Then you know that our stomach secretes hydrochloric acid. So this hydrochloric acid literally kills any pathogen which enters into your alimentary canal through the food. Then lysozyme enzyme. I already mentioned lysozyme enzyme is a general enzyme which is capable of killing bacteria, and it is present in many different fluid parts of our body. So that's about the innate immunity in brief. Now, here I have listed different types of innate immunity mechanisms which help us to protect against the infection and diseases. So I already mentioned you about skin, mucous membrane, then we have cilia. So cilia are the structures which will remove the pathogen from the body. Coughing and sneezing. Coughing and sneezing behavior is actually aimed to remove the uh, pathogen from the respiratory system. And peristalsis, okay, so the reverse peristalsis causes vomiting. So whenever some unwanted substance or harmful substance enters into your digestive system, what we are going to do, we are going to vomit. So vomiting is result of reverse peristalsis. Then washing action of tear and saliva, I already mentioned. Along with this, we have secretions of skin, secretions of digestive tract, human milk, nasal secretions, lysozyme enzyme, bacterial flora. So we have some beneficial bacterial flora inside our body which are also helpful in preventing and destroying the foreign bacteria which enters into our body. Now, cellular mechanisms like phagocytosis and natural killer cells. Then there is something called genetic factors. So species immunity. You know that there are some diseases which will happen only in particular species and it will not affect the other species. You just think of malaria. Even though Plasmodium completes its sexual cycle in mosquito, mosquito is not going to suffer from malaria because it is a different species. So malaria will affect only the human beings. So like this, different species have immunity against different types of diseases. So racial immunity. Now you know that in humans there are different types of races like African race and European race, Asian race, etc. So some races have particular or specific immunity against some diseases. For example, African population, they are immune to the malaria. Okay, it's mainly because of that sickle cell anemia, but they have natural resistance against malaria. Okay, like this we find racial immunity and individual immunity. So all individuals have different type of immunity. So one person's immunity is different from another person's immunity. So a same pathogen, if it enters into two different persons, one person may get infected, whereas the other person, one person may develop disease, whereas the other person may not develop disease because they have different type of individual immunity. Now temperature, inflammation and fever are so these three things you have to understand very clearly. Whenever the infection occurs, the body temperature increases. So this increase in body temperature is actually a defense mechanism. So when the body temperature is increased, the metabolic rates increase. So it helps to destroy the pathogen which has entered into the body. You know what we do whenever we suffer from fever? High temperature is called fever. So we try to reduce that temperature. So it's actually doing the opposite thing, right? Now inflammation, so is the process. What is inflammation? Whenever a body part uh, is infected by a pathogen, so it's going to swell, it's going to show redness, heat and pain. So that is actually a defense mechanism against the entry of pathogen. Then fever, as I already told you, fever is actually a symptom of the immune system fighting against the pathogen. Now, acquired immunity, let us try to study some acquired immunity things. It is also called adaptive immunity. The resistance that an individual acquires during his lifetime is known as acquired immunity. It is also called specific immunity. This type of immunity is classified into two types, natural and artificial immunity. Now, you just think of human beings, right? Now, after the birth, I may get infected by A virus, whereas another person is not at all infected by A virus, but he may be infected with B virus. Now, since I got infected with A virus, I have developed immunity against A virus. When I recover, my immune system responds and I develop immunity against A virus. And the other person develops immunity against B virus. So the person develops immunity against the infection. So the type of infection which the person faces results in the type of immunity he is going to develop. So that is called acquired immunity. Therefore, all individuals have different types of acquired immunity. Now, we already discussed about active immunity with a simple example. Active immunity, the immunity induced by exposure to a foreign antigen is called active immunity. And active immunity is the resistance developed by an individual after contact with foreign antigens, for example, microorganisms. Now, the active immunity may be developed due to clinical or subclinical infections. So I already told you the infections caused by microorganisms, and the immunity may develop due to immunization with vaccines, right? So real infection and vaccines result in the same type of immunity, whereas infection is dangerous because it may cause some damage to the person, whereas vaccine simply stimulates the immune system to produce antibodies, whereas the real pathogen is not there, therefore the person is not in danger. Now, exposure to microbial products such as toxins and toxides. So sometimes microbe itself may not be the cause. For example, when the honeybee stings, right? So the chemical, the poison of the honey is going to produce the immunity or immune response. So biting of snake, biting of insects, they have they are going to inject the chemical, and those chemicals you can consider them as toxic material. So immune system also develops immune response against these particular toxins. Now, natural active immunity, it is acquired by natural clinical or subclinical infections. I already gave you the example. So if I develop immunity due to the infection, that is called natural active immunity. If I develop immunity against a particular disease by taking vaccines, then it is called artificial active immunity. And this one we already discussed. So the after active immunity, there is something called passive immunity. So I already mentioned about the passive immunity, natural passive immunity, where the embryo or the newborn baby gets the ready-made antibodies directly from the mother. And in another case, the person is given antibodies which are extracted from the recovering patient, which is called plasma therapy. So these are some of the basic concepts. You know, immunology is a very big field, and a lot of technical things are there. In this session, I just tried to make familiarize with what is immunology, what is immunity, what is immune response, and what are the different things that lead to the immune response, etc. I hope you understood these basic concepts, and in the next sessions, okay, so we are going to study in detail about different aspects of immune response. Thank you.